How many rednecks would it take to bring down a Bigfoot in hand-to-hand combat? That's the burning question we asked OpenAI's latest model. The AI crunched numbers and came back with a precise answer: 22. But it didn't stop there. It went on to describe exactly how the legendary showdown would go down. This is that story.
Picture a crisp autumn afternoon in the foothills of Tala Peak, a sleepy region blessed with towering pines and whispered folklore. Rumors of a giant hairy beast had floated around for years, but few folks took them seriously until livestock started disappearing and strange howls echoed through the moonlit woods. That's when 22 determined men and women, proud to be called Rednecks, decided enough was enough. Either they'd put an end to the rumors, or they'd confirm them once and for all. Leading the charge was Clayton Clay Tumbleweed, a man whose calloused hands and permanent sunburn proved he was no stranger to hard work. Flanking him were the 21 others, each with a unique knack: a boar wrestler, a backyard inventor, a guy who insisted on lugging fireworks just in case, and plenty more. They set off into the forest, boots crunching on pine needles, hearts pounding at the thought of meeting Bigfoot in the flesh. It didn't take long for them to stumble upon enormous footprints, easily 2 feet in length, pressed deep into the muddy ground. The forest seemed to hold its breath. As evening shadows stretched over fallen logs, they heard a low, resonant snarl that made their spines tingle. Moments later, a hulking silhouette stepped into the dim light. A creature easily 8 feet tall, covered in matted fur and taut with muscle. Its eyes glinted like embers, tracking every movement of the intruders in its domain. Without warning, Bigfoot roared and charged, swinging an arm the size of a small tree trunk. The first to feel the impact was Jesse Ray, who caught a backhand across the chest and flew a good 10 feet, landing with bruised ribs and a face full of dead leaves. Another unlucky soul, Dwight Possum Johnson, tried to tackle the beast at knee level, but found himself vaulted onto a stump, scraping his arms raw and twisting his ankle. Bigfoot's claws left bright red streaks on his shoulder, more terrifying than any scar he'd earned wresting raccoons from hen houses. But these 22 were nothing if not stubborn. The moment someone got knocked aside, another leapt in. A particularly fierce fighter, Bobby Sue, managed to grab a fistful of Bigfoot's fur, yanking the creature backwards. Her biceps bulged as she held on, but not before Bigfoot spun and slammed her into a tree. The crack of her impact reverberated through the clearing. She nearly bit through her lip, and blood trickled from her nose. Yet she gritted her teeth and scrambled to her feet, refusing to yield. Amid the flailing limbs and desperate shouts, more members joined the fray. 4 or 5 people clung to each of Bigfoot's arms, only to be flung off in different directions. Earl Roadkill took a brutal swipe across the cheek that left him with a ragged gash. Meanwhile, Leroy Pyro got stomped on the foot, howling in pain as the creature's massive weight nearly broke his toes. Yet, for all this violence, the Rednecks gave as good as they got. Bigfoot now sported bruises along its barrel chest, courtesy of several full-force tackles, and its left arm bled from a nasty scrape inflicted by a jagged belt buckle when Clay charged it at full tilt. With every grimace and roared expletive, the 22 confirmed they weren't going to back down. They leveraged every hog-tying technique they'd honed on ranches and county fairs. One redneck managed to loop a rope around Bigfoot's ankles, cinching tight, but the beast's desperate kick snapped both the rope and the redneck's wrist in one horrifying crunch. Another 3-man team latched onto Bigfoot's torso, pinning its arms briefly, but not before the creature raked its nails across someone's forearm, drawing fresh rivulets of blood. The clearing erupted in a frenzy of dust, leaves, and adrenaline. Almost everyone was sporting a new cut, bruise, or scrape. Some folks even felt their ribs screaming in protest with every breath. But the AI's math held steady, as if it were dictating the very laws of physics here. 22 was the exact number needed. Little by little, the onslaught of bodies, grapples, and raw stubbornness overwhelmed Bigfoot. Even this mighty cryptid had its limits. Its roars became ragged. Its swings lost a bit of ferocity. Finally, with a thunderous crash that made the canopy shudder, the beast toppled under a collective dog pile of battered but unrelenting rednecks. Flattened against the forest floor, Bigfoot heaved for air, eyes still wild. Some of the group hastily tried to secure ropes around its wrists and ankles, though each attempted knot came undone amid the creature's thrashing. Clay, coughing from a likely cracked rib, yelled for everyone to keep pushing, ignoring the blood trickling down his own forehead. Bobby Sue, wincing from bruised ribs, struggled to hold Bigfoot's leg still. For a few moments, it looked like they might restrain it for good. Then Bigfoot made one final surge. With a guttural scream, it lurched upright just enough to fling off 2 or 3 people. The beast coughed, blood spraying from its maw, a sign that internal damage had taken its toll. Several rednecks went flying into bushes, landing with painful thuds. Bigfoot wobbled, locked eyes with Clay for an instant, and slumped backward, its colossal frame hitting the ground in a resounding thump. The surrounding trees quivered as though bowing to the end of something ancient. Panting heavily, every muscle and bone aching, the 22 survivors crawled away from the fallen cryptid. A moment passed in stunned silence. Blood dripped from the wounds on Bigfoot's flank and mouth. Its breathing grew uneven, then stopped altogether. The fight had been so brutal, so relentless, that it left the creature lifeless on the forest floor. Clay, shoulder throbbing from being slammed against a tree, crept closer, gingerly pressing 2 fingers to the beast's neck. No pulse, no movement. Some let out shaky sighs of relief. Others had tears in their eyes from the sheer intensity of it all. They had marched in, hoping to prove Bigfoot was real. They'd confirmed the legend, only to watch it die at their hands. Everyone sported fresh wounds, broken bones, split lips, mangled wrists, and bruises that would take weeks to heal. But there lay Bigfoot, breathless and unmoving, a victim of overwhelming force and pure human stubbornness. Though triumphant in a grim way, the group was somber as they gathered their wounded and improvised splints for broken limbs. A few even removed their caps in respect for the fallen cryptid, which, until this day, they'd thought might be just a tall tale. They took photos, blurry, bloodied proof, for fear that no one would believe them otherwise. Night approached, draping the forest in an eerie hush. There was little for them to do but wait. Limping and cradling injuries, the 22 trudged back to Tally Peak under a sky strewn with stars. The hush of the woods felt heavier than before, as though some ancient guardian had departed. Word would spread, no doubt, and folks might call it the biggest hoax or the saddest stroke of luck. But if anyone asked these rednecks how many of them it really took to bring down Bigfoot, they'd have a definitive answer. 22, exactly as the AI had predicted, though at a cost, etched in battered limbs, bruised pride, and the quiet end of a legend.